Hello folks, welcome to Thursday. It is Law Thursday as per usual. We used to do these on Tuesday as well, but I decided to just slow it down a little bit to make sure that I can do more content covered over more days. So, I honestly thought that the Orcs were going to win this one, but they didn't. The Alpha Legion did, so here we are. If you like what I do, the subscribe button is down below. If you've not subscribed yet, then please do. It really does help the channel out. And if you're going to get any models over the next couple of weeks, make sure you head over to Composite Games and use the promo code Northern Exile down below to get yourself 5% off at checkout. And also, if you really like what I do, the Patreon is down below. If you want any of your questions in the Q&A first, or to just ask me Q&A questions, because I only tend to read out those from Patreon, then that is the place to go to give whatever you can to help the channel go and keep going, and to make sure that I can do this a lot more often, rather than me actually marking papers and stuff, you know, doing the day job. Let's run into it, shall we? There will be very little picks in this one, mainly because I spent a lot of time formulating the idea of the actual Alpha Legion in my head and what I was going to do with them. So, for most of this process, I've been sitting here looking at the blinking text icon and wondering what the hell to write. The Alpha Legion are a bit of a conundrum, to say the least. I have to be honest and upfront, I am not a fan of the Cabal at all, and I tend to think they take away from the Alpha Legion more than giving them depth. I know that will be controversial. If you don't know what the Cabal are, I will explain it later on, but for those of you who know about the Alpha Legion lore, you'll know what I mean when I say I'm not a big fan of the Cabal. I don't think they bring a lot to the Alpha Legion, and I don't think that they really add anything. They just add confusion. And too much confusion is a bad thing, even for a secretive legion. The Alpha Legion should be secretive, but not impenetrable to the reader. Of course, when meme culture gets involved, it tends to blow up and show the worst parts of the lore to the most people possible. So let's deflate that, shall we? Examine what is going on with the Alpha Legion and what we can do to change them and perhaps, maybe, make them better. So the good first, as always. So the research has clearly been done by Games Workshop and by someone in their writing team into things like hypnotic techniques, mind overrides, personality changing engrams, ciphers, and the like. These are all things that would convince a sleeper agent or operative that they actually are who they say they are, right? That is the best deception in the world. You know, you can't really catch somebody out if they truly believe they are who they say they are, right? And they believe that just before they're activated. So when they're activated, they snap back into being Alpha Legionnaires once again, and away we go. We actively see this in certain Alpha Legion stories where they infiltrate other chapters and, again, truly believe they are who they say they are, hence passing most screening tests when having their faces reconstructed to resemble those they replaced, all until they are activated when they get their own memories and personality back as an Alpha Legion Marine. This is a perfect way to infiltrate something like a Space Marine Legion, something thought near impossible in the lore thanks to Vox channels and the camaraderie most of the Legions share. The Alpha Legion find a way though, and that's what I love about them. So, no Legion sticks to their role so clearly as the Alpha Legion do. Their mode is insidiousness and secrecy, melding into all areas of the Imperial war machine to break certain parts in one cell so that an effect is felt thousands of light years away. They can pull on a thread here because they know it will vibrate millions and millions and millions of light years over there. They are the Legion of pulling on threads, of knowledge, and as such, they would weirdly be a perfect choice to join Siege. But we'll get into that later. Okay, we'll get into that later. Their colours and iconography are unique and gorgeous to paint. They are possibly the best looking Horus Heresy army when it comes to using shiny, metallic, deep bluish sea green that they are daubed in in most of their lore. In fact, I will go out on a limb and say they are the best looking of the Horus Heresy armies, in my opinion. This was controversial to a time, of course, as Citadel didn't actually make this paint, meaning the models you saw in most magazines and photos from Games Workshop were likely using third-party paints, despite you being unable to use said paints in a Games Workshop store, but I digress. That and their use of spears is something that is often overlooked by other legions. It is the most simple weapon you can use, like literally it's the easiest to learn, which is why I love the fact that the Alpha Legion are the ones to use it. They don't use these advanced melee weapons, no, they use spears, because anybody can be trained to use them. Right? That's what they want. They would actually like agents from other legions to fight in their own style. To seduce them over to their side of thinking, give them a spear and say, this is how you fight as an Alpha Legionnaire. You can also keep the enemy at arm's length with a spear. They don't want to duel. They want to pinprick you once with a poisoned blade and move on to the next guy, or seep back into the darkness. They don't want to cause fuss. That's why I love the spear. I think it's the perfect weapon for the Alpha Legion, because if they can find a really massive human, right, and put him in fake Astartes armor and give him a spear, that's now an Alpha Legionnaire. You wouldn't know the difference. Sure, by the way that they move, eventually you'd be like, that's not a proper Legionnaire, but you would never really know. That's why the spear is perfect for them, and it sings to what they do and what they are. It also has some amazing classical and mythological leanings to it, like the Hydra, of course, and things like that we have that are part of the iconography. Don't tell me you've not looked at that Altharius Forge World miniature and not thought, that's fucking badass. Because it is. Let's be honest, it is. Over to the bad then. And therein lies the problem though. The Alpha Legion look and are this cool, but they are utterly impenetrable for most people. Their lore is contradictory by design to sow confusion and annoying allegory. To me, though, whenever I see this to this extent, I simply give up and walk away. I don't care how clever or professional or cool your lore is, if you start contradicting yourself too much, even if you're trying to contradict yourself, I will lose interest and walk away. And I'm the kind of guy who will read your lore cover to cover. If I'm doing that, what are normal people doing when they come across your lore? At that stage, the Alpha Legion have only succeeded in driving away someone who could have found them really cool. You can be secretive and cool. Ask the Dark Angels. The constant memes are a terrible look for the Legion. Even in our own voting, we had the same tired old I am Altharius folks in the comments. Look, I celebrate your love for your Legion, but you have to also understand that pushing this kind of thing too often leads to your Legion becoming a parody of what they were supposed to be. Okay? I love the I am Altharius stuff, and I use it myself a little bit later on, but at the same time, just be careful. Just be careful how far you push it. The contradictory nature of the Alpha Legion means the true message of them is lost in the ether. They are a nothing faction. They don't stand for or mean anything. The Alpha Legion are a completely lost legion with no real goal or needs. The few times we hear from Altharius himself, he is speaking in irritating half-truths, non-sequiturs, or just irritating allegory. It is a real shame with a legion that could be so much more whilst retaining its secrecy, right? Finally, the Cabal. Yes, we're there. We're at that stage of the video where, listen, if you don't know who the Cabal are a series of aliens and humans and very powerful people who have seen the future, or at least they claim to have seen the future. And they see that if the Emperor wins the Horus Heresy, if he comes out on top, then eventually, you know, humans will stick around and an age of war will continue until the end of time that will kind of annihilate the entire galaxy because chaos finds most of its power in humans rather than anybody else, right? So as long as humans are around, so will chaos. They see, though, that if they make Horus win the Horus Heresy, if he wins, if the traitors win, then eventually he will grow really self-loathing and annihilate humanity on his own, and that will rob the Chaos Gods of their main source of power and make them blink out of existence. If that sounds like a fucking stupid plan to you, that's because it is a stupid plan, and is a plan that, trans-dimensional aliens simply probably wouldn't come up with, because it's ridiculous, it's silly, and doesn't make much sense. You are relying on so many wishy-washy, it'll turn out fine hand waves with this, that it just doesn't work as a thing. And to take the entire Alpha Legion and give them this story that gives them such a contradictory nature just strips away everything that could be the Alpha Legion. Every single Space Marine Legion should have its independence. And even if they're serving a Chaos God, they should do so independently. They want to serve that Chaos God, so they do serve that Chaos God. Most of the legions that we see, they fall into willing service of the Chaos Gods, even if they're manipulated into doing so. The Alpha Legion are not manipulated into joining the Cabal. They freely choose to join them, which is idiotic. You've spent the entire Legion book building up the Alpha Legion as this incredibly smart threat to anybody who comes across them, yet they buy what the Cabal are selling, hook, line and sinker. I don't think so. It cheapens the lore, it cheapens the Alpha Legion. I'm going to cut them out. They're not a part of the lore going forward in the Exileverse. The Cabal don't fucking exist, okay? They're not a thing. Alright, moving on. What would I change? Alright, so, first of all, even though it is a meme, we are keeping the I am Alfarius, as it just works for what we're going for. At the end of the day, the fact that this is overused to the point of nausea is the fault of the fan base and not the writers, in my opinion. It's only the writers' fault if they lean into it a bit too much. I hope not to do that. Let's get started, shall we? So in our lore, Alfarius and Omegon are still twins. They bear these silly names because the Emperor himself named them. The twins were actually the firstborn of the Primarchs and already approaching their teens when their younger siblings were torn from the planet in a massive warp storm that alerted the Emperor to the fact that the Chaos Gods now knew of his plans. In fact, their rash action in scattering his sons told him that he had hit a nerve and that he was on the right track. He names them Alfarius and Omegon as a kind of a joke, right? One of them will eventually stay on Terra, and the other one will eventually go off of Terra and start doing his own plans in the sky and things like that. But I'll get to that a little bit later on. After a few years more, the twins are fully grown and are now seen by Malkador as the Emperor's right and left hands, right? Well, what can a hand do? It can beckon. It can point to show the way. It can make a fist. It can make and wield weapons. These are the tasks of the first Primarchs. Being the first Primarchs, the twins are actually only a few hands taller than an average Marine from another Legion. The kicker, however, is that all Alpha Legion Marines will be rather large to further obscure which one of them is their Primarch, because Alpha Legion Marines are a bit more less refined than the newer Marines. As such, it goes Thunder Warriors at the top, who are massive dudes in power armor, then the Alpha Legion, who are a little bit shorter and more refined, then the normal Astartes, who are the most refined, but also a hand or two shorter than most Alpha Legion Marines, right? So, of course, this obscures which one of them is their Primarch if they're all wearing the same armor. After their training at the hands of the Emperor and Malkador, the twins are separated. And that's what separates the twins from everybody else. They're trained by the Emperor and Malkador personally, which makes them much more dangerous combatants than most of the other Primarchs, when you look into it, right? Alfarius is to remain on Terra, okay, to root out threats to the Emperor's rule at home, and there are threats there, as we learn in later books, whilst Omegon is sent into the galaxy at large to find his brothers. That's right, Omegon is the scout that finds all of the other Primarchs and sends their location and current status to the Emperor on Terra. Alright? The Emperor is not all-knowing. Don't you find it weird? He already knows a lot about each Primarch before ever meeting them in the lore. Well, now there is a clear reason for that. Omegon has been watching them for years and sent reports and dossiers back to the Emperor on Terra. So the Emperor already knows where he needs to start conquering to find his sons out in the galaxy. I always found it was ridiculous the Emperor just came across his sons out there when the galaxy's that big. You know what I mean? The Great Crusade can't be that big. The galaxy is so fucking massive. But it can be done if you have somebody already pointing you in the right direction. And that's what Omegon is doing for the Great Crusade. Weirdly, Omegon is directing the entire war effort without anybody really knowing, apart from the Emperor. So, Omegon, however, is becoming more and more alienated in his role as a scout and assassin of the Emperor out in the galaxy, which will have tragic repercussions later on. But I'll get to that a bit later. Back on Terra, we now know the reason for Alfarius being kept behind on Terra. He is a psyker, and a very good one at that. He cannot completely control his gift, however, and instead, all his talents allow him to do is to see the true nature of people by simply speaking to them. In a very similar way to Corvus Corax and people like that, right? That we also have in this lore. It's sort of like reading an aura, right? You can read people's auras pretty well. The reason why a few Primarchs can do this in my setting is because it's one of the greatest talents that a Primarch can actually have. Right? One of the greatest talents a Primarch can have is to see the true nature of the people around him so that he can lead them better. Only Lorgar and Alfarius are this good at it though. Right? So, the only folks this does not work on, however, is the Emperor and Malcador. During his training, however, Alfarius finds a chink in the mental armour of Malcador and pulls a mental cipher from him without him knowing. This will be very important later. The Alpha Legion is built to be 50,000 Marines strong, the smallest of the legions by far, but these warriors are trained not just by Alfarius, but by Malcador also. They are the Proto-Inquisitorial Space Marines, meant to eventually become the only chamber militant of that organisation that Malcador is already laying the groundwork for. In this setting, the Inquisition is not something just thought up after the Horus Heresy, it was always meant to exist, and the Alpha Legion were always meant to be its single chamber militant. Eventually, the Alpha Legion are sent to watch the other legions, to infiltrate their ranks and observe for any signs of treachery. One of Garrow's few Marines on the Eisenstein, fleeing Horus for instance in that book, is an Alpha Legionnaire who was masquerading as one of the Lunar Wolves. So there we are, right? When the Horus Heresy breaks out, Alfarius returns to Terra to receive orders from his father. That is when the cipher finally kicks in on seeing his father again. He sees the Emperor's true nature, just for a moment, and collapses into nightmarish dreams. There, he is visited by Tzeentch. The Chaos God has seen the eventual fall of the Thousand Suns, and finds them rather lacking at setting up and enacting plots, the plots he needs to tug on the weave of fate. He has selected the Alpha Legion to be his proxies in this regard. So, in this lore, I don't like to take it as read that the two lost Primarchs exist, the 2nd and 11th Primarchs, and so I've given their powers to Lorgar and to Alfarius, respectively. So that their powers of being able to see the true natures of people. I don't like to rely on them existing. In my lore, I don't think we even have... We only have 18 legions in my lore. I mean, I like the lost legions. I would have them there just being lost, and that's it. And you can make your own legion if you want to, that kind of a thing. Anyway. Alfarius, at first, refuses Tzeentch's offer. Tzeentch shows him the true form of the Emperor, however, a cold and calculating figure playing a game of chess with gods, uncaring for his sons or for humanity at all. All he cares about is attaining godhood. Now, we do not know if Tzeentch is lying here. He likely is. But Alfarius looks into the soul of the god and sees no hint of a lie. Of course, this is a god we are talking about. If he does not want Alfarius to find something, he will simply, probably, not find it, right? But it leaves things up for interpretation in the lore. Alfarius awakens and leaves Terra with a contingent of his legion to find his brother, to seek his counsel. The two meet in the ruins of Istvan long after the Dropsite massacre, where Omegon is looking for Vulcan and other survivors in secret with his own warriors. There, Alfarius lays out his final plan to Omegon: slay the Emperor and install Horus in his place, a more human ruler. Simple and direct. A beheading. Omegon, of course, refuses, and the two brothers come to blows. Now, it is very, very important to know that Alfarius, at this point, has not seen Horus for years. But he likes him. He knows him. Right? He knows his heart. In fact, he looked into his heart and saw the heart of a ruler. A prideful ruler, maybe, but a more human ruler, nonetheless, years ago. Right? Alfarius was one of the only Primarchs, or one of the few Primarchs, who said, you know what? That guy should be War Master. He likes Horus as a commander and as a general. That's why he's making this decision. He doesn't know the true extent of Horus falling to chaos. But he will. The two brothers come to blows, Alfarius and Omegon. Heavily outnumbered by Alfarius, the Loyalist Alpha Legion forces are killed, and in the melee, Omegon is beaten by his brother and his traitor marines into unconsciousness. Shackled in Alfarius' flagship, Omegon is tortured and mind-scoured for any information he has on the Primarchs and their weaknesses. Why? Aha! All these things linking together. Alfarius fights the Horus Heresy as a battlefield assassin, taking on some of the greatest champions in the Loyalist ranks and slaying them. Let's not forget, Alfarius is just above Marine level in terms of power. He is like 5 Sigismunds combined with the power of the psychic power of, say, 5 Aramans. So he is easily the most capable Space Marine in the galaxy, and he could take on a Primarch if the setting allowed, right? If he was able to prepare the battlefield. He actively knocks a few Loyalist Primarchs out of the fight entirely for several weeks because of his assassination attempts. So he wounds them, almost kills them, and then is driven off, you know? He almost kills Corvus Corax, and is only outlasted by Vulcan due to his insane healing ability. He is one of the Marines that attacks Guilliman on his very homeworld. Not only does he defeat and seemingly mortally wound Guilliman, who later recovers at great cost, but manages to exfiltrate from Macragge in wartime, when the full strength of the Ultramarines is mustered there. An impossible feat, but he pulls it off because he's a fucking Alfarius, bitch, and this is what he does. Alright. When finally Alfarius meets Horus, however, he is absolutely horrified. He sees the true nature of Horus, a neglected son who is panicking that humanity will end with the Emperor leading it. Not just that, he sees Horus stopped believing that long ago. Right? He believed that at the start, now he doesn't. Now, he just sees it as an excuse, using it as a pretense to take the throne. Okay? So he used to think that, hey, humanity will end if the Emperor is leading it, right? Okay, there we have the ideas of the Cabal coming in. So they're gone, but their ideas are still around somewhere. Horus initially was convinced, hey, the Emperor is going to lead humanity down a dark path. All he wants to do is be a god. That will end us as a race, as a species. I need to take the throne for the good of humanity. And eventually he stops believing that and just wants the throne for himself. What's more, Alfarius sees massive figures behind Horus in his visions, slowly directing his actions towards Terra. Of course, These are the Chaos Gods, pulling the strings behind the scenes. He now sees one of them actually is Tzeentch, right? The same guy who's trying to manipulate him. Broken, he returns to Omegon on his own flagship. For all he knows, Guilliman is dead by his own hand, the Imperium is severely weakened by his efforts, and he is extremely remorseful, almost too much so, almost suicidal. He releases Omegon and tells him that he is utterly conflicted. He now does not know which path to follow. Remain loyal to a dying dream, or crush it and replace it with something else. He tells Omegon that they will fight to the death. The victor will lead the Legion. Let fate decide which way our Legion will go in the Horus Heresy. Utterly loyal to their Legion and Primarchs, the Alpha Legion all agree as one. On the bridge of their capital ship, we see a Matrix Revelation-style fight with tens of thousands of silent Alpha Legionnaires standing in formation, surrounding the fight, watching their Primarchs duel to the death for the soul and direction of their Legion. Finally, Omegon slays his brother. He picks up his brother's helm and replaces it with his own. He replaces his brother's helmet onto his own. So he takes off his own helmet, replaces it with Alfarius' helmet. And he sends out a single call over the Vox to all channels, to all Legionnaires. I am Alfarius, he says. Now, if you want to make this more mysterious, you could make it unclear who wins the duel. That way you have no idea if the Alpha Legion are Loyalist or not, and you can leave their story here, and have them make all of these weird actions all across the galaxy, so we don't know if they're Loyalist or not. That way you will give them a better lore, but you will keep what the Alpha Legion are in the current lore, which is maddeningly weird, and we don't know whose side they're on, right? If you want to keep the lore as it is from here, that's the way you do it. You make the duel inconclusive. We don't know who won. We only know that the victor picked up a helmet, put it on, and said, I am Alfarius, right? If you want them to be a traitor, then they act as they do in the current lore going forwards. But Alfarius does not die to Dawn. Dawn kills the first captain of the Alpha Legion, thinking it is Alfarius, and for this, Alfarius places him into a 7-month coma. He beats him nearly to death. This is the reason Dawn needs more time to prepare the Imperial defences, and why he sends Vulcan away to delay Horus in his suicide mission. It all ties together, see? Cool. If you want them Loyalist, if you want the Alpha Legion to remain Loyalist, well, I want to give you a go at that. What would a Loyalist Alpha Legion do in the Horus Heresy? Let me know in the comment section down below. For me, I have a few ideas. I'd have them do the same tactics, but reverse them. They stay traitors, quote unquote. So the entire galaxy thinks they're traitors. The only people who know they're not are the Emperor and Malkador. They are actually being double agents working against Horus from within. They could even be the ones delaying Horus from mustering his legions and spreading dissent in the ranks, right? I would even have them be the guys who vet and recruit the Knights Errant of Malkador from the traitor legions. So any Knight Errant who comes from the traitor legions is approached by the Alpha Legion first and tested severely until they're sent to become Knights Errant under Malkador. So people like Mesa Varan and all them, they're always approached by an Alpha Legionnaire first. They're vetted and then they're brought into the fold. And these guys go on to become, of course, the first Grey Knights. I would have 3/4 of the Legion become Knights Errant at the end of the Horus Heresy. So they cast off all of their secrecy at the end for one final battle. This means the Loyalist Alpha Legion are a chapter of around 1,000 strong Marines at the time of the Codex Astartes. At least, those are the official numbers. They're probably a lot more than that, but, across the galaxy. It also means that the Grey Knights now have a reason for having so many Marines when they come out of the warp once more. Not all of them need to be Psychers at the very beginning of their existence, and many were not. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think? I've given you a few ideas. The only solid part of this lore that I want you to walk away from is when I say, at the part where we say I am Althorius at the end of the duel. That's when the actual lore rewrite stops. Everything from there is up to you. That's what I would do with the chapter. It's up with the Legion. It's up to you where they go from here. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below. I love you all a long time. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll be back tomorrow with some more hobby nightmares, or maybe even a very special video that I've been working on for quite some time. A good friend of mine has convinced me to revisit one of my scripts, so we'll see if that comes across towards the weekend. Love you loads. See you later. Have a good one. Bye now.